Victory Monday, sort of. I guess they all count the same. That's what I've been telling you all year long. The Green Bay Packers have moved to 10-3. That's the way we're going to put this. A 20-15 win over the Washington Redskins yesterday. I am your host. I'm Jacob Westendorf. And joined with me, as always, we're trying to look younger than we are with the backwards ball caps here. So I'm thinking that makes him look a little younger. I don't know what it does for me. But it's Jason Perone is with me, as always. Jason, Victory Monday, final division stretch, those big three games we talked about at the beginning of the year. How are we feeling?
We're feeling pretty 10-3. That's how we're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. I've often joked that there are way too many people that watch way too much college football. And in college football, these style points do matter, unfortunately. But in the NFL, that's not how it works. It's kind of funny, actually. I looked at Facebook Memories is a wonderful thing. And I found out 5 years ago, right around this time, I was at Lambeau watching the 2014 version of the Packers, the best team that Green Bay's had in the last 5 years. Pretty easily there. And it said, this isn't college football, and we'll take wins however we can get them. And I looked it up. It was the 43-37 Packers-Falcons Monday night game. Not a good game from a different perspective, from the fact that they almost blew a 31-7 lead that night. But just kind of funny how that all worked out. Obviously, that team finished 12-4. Their fate ended in the NFC Championship game, and we don't need to talk about how that happened. Not a whole lot to glean from yesterday's game, so honestly, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. Jason, we talked pre-show. Honestly, what we both said, the only way that we were going to learn something was if the Packers had won in playing the way they did on offense against like Dallas or Oakland, where they score 40 burger, and by playing defense the way they did against Chicago, where it was just a complete shutdown, which that part was there for the most part until the very, very end, where they kind of let their foot off the gas a little bit. But just there's not a lot to learn. Washington sucks, and Green Bay won the game they were supposed to win. And it kind of felt like, I don't know who described it this way. It might have been Peter Bukowski, but I'd have to check that to be sure. But it felt like a game where it was just like, okay, just pull out enough for this game to win, even though that's not how NFL teams operate, obviously. But a lot to get to on the outskirts of this game. So let's start with the news. The news is that Jared Veldheer, the waiver claim out of New England, was activated today. The team subsequently released Adam Pankey, which we wish him the best. Hopefully, Jared Veldheer, a nice depth move. Hopefully never has to play. There's just certain players that when the team picks them up, you're like, okay, that's a pretty good pickup, and we still hope he never plays. If the Packers, every year we do that gnashing of teeth over the backup quarterback situation, and that's the reality, is we're hoping, whether it's Tim Boyle, Deshaun Kaiser, some veteran, whoever, and we'll do it all again next year, I'm sure, we're hoping he never has to play. And that's just the reality of that situation. But Veldheer activated on the 53-man roster. Pankey dumped. I wonder if he's ready to just move on from Green Bay. He had obviously signed with another team's practice squad. He was on Tennessee's practice squad when the Packers signed him to the active roster. That was after putting Lane Taylor on injured reserve. The other news, we want to send our condolences to Joshua Jackson. Played really well yesterday, and we found out that he was playing with a heavy heart. His father passed away on Friday. So Josh Jackson, wish him well. I've never lost a parent, thankfully, but Jason, you have, so you can kind of speak a little bit to what he's going through a little bit here. And you only get one dad, so that's never easy, obviously. And then on top of it, he had to play a football game, and he had to play well because Kevin King did not play with a shoulder injury. Tony Brown did not play, I believe, with a foot injury. So Jackson was put into essentially the starting lineup. He played about 30 snaps and played pretty well. So Jason, if you want to touch on that real quick, just because of the personal aspect to it, we can. Otherwise, we can move into the football side of things.
Well, the only thing I'll say about Josh Jackson is, it's tough. And we're not going to compare it to when Brett Favre played after he lost his dad. Obviously, very, different positions, different type of a situation, but it's not any less difficult to deal with. I don't know what the relationship was between Josh and his dad, but it's a parent, so it's tough. But for him to be somebody who has not been on the field very much this year, to finally get an opportunity to come on the field because of injury and have it happen at that point, things could have gone more south had he not played well. And obviously, life before football. But when you make the decision to play, whether it's for personal reasons or you feel like you can still suit up even though you're dealing with an injury or a bump and a bruise, you're still expected to perform and play well. It's the NFL. And I don't want to sound callous, but it's the NFL. You still have to perform. And Josh Jackson didn't do too badly. Now, again, it's against Washington, who does not have a good offense, and he was not covering Scary Terry. So that was, I'm not going to call it a layup, but he did what he should have done, and he did what he was supposed to do, which was not let the, basically at that point, it's like, listen, just don't let the roof cave in on you at that point. Just hold, keep the room together. The only thing I will say, as far as the Washington game goes, I obviously didn't appreciate it in real time because A, it was a Washington touchdown, and B, because the TV copy is never great. And I was watching it on my laptop because I had to stream this one. It was not aired in my local area. But that catch was, I'll just say this, I'm glad Washington, if there's one reason I'm glad Washington is not in the NFC North, it is because of that. Don't mind the fact that, based on the fact that Green Bay played the NFC East this year, and I would assume the Packers and Redskins records are not going to sync up for the next couple of years. It should be at least 2 seasons, 3 actually, before we see Washington again. And I am not going to complain about that at all. So I know we're going to break down some of the aspects of that game, but it was very, it was kind of similar to that 2014 game against Atlanta where they had just come off a huge win over the Patriots the week prior. Mm-hmm. This was kind of sandwiched in between. I forget who they played the week after.
Buffalo. That was the game that cost them home field advantage the following week.
So there you go. So and not like, so the Atlanta was just kind of thrown in there, and it was like this home game, like, okay, it's Atlanta, it's the Falcons outdoors, and I don't care about Julio Jones.
That year.
Yeah, they were bad, and then I just remember that Julio Jones was otherworldly, and interestingly enough, the most unotherworldly defensive back for the Packers was the only guy that could apparently lock him up at all in any way, and that was Devon House, which was very strange. So anyway, kudos and cheers to Josh Jackson. I very much appreciate his efforts and him showing up for the team like that. And obviously losing a parent is tough. And, I don't want to blow this out of proportion, but the Packers have definitely faced some of that personal adversity this season. When you think about what Mason Crosby just went through a couple weeks ago with his sister-in-law and Josh Jackson and his father, sometimes we don't always hear about these things and we don't always know what's going on the field. So this was a good lesson in, if a guy struggles or if he doesn't struggle or if something's happening on the field, we're quick to criticize them because they missed a play or didn't make that play or holy cow, they had a huge game. You just never know what's happening personally that's motivating them or that they're fighting against. I guess is really the only other thing I would say about that.
Yeah, hopefully that's the last of those. Obviously, you never want those things to go through, but it was a nice step forward for Josh Jackson, even on just a professional level, because this is a guy's second-round pick. It's been a healthy scratch in a couple games this year. That's obviously not something that you look forward to when you pick somebody as high as they did for that player. So Jackson had a good game. That was nice to see, even if it wasn't against Randy Moss and Terrell Owens. It's a step in the right direction, which at this point you got to be looking at it that way for somebody. He played and he played well. That's a stepping stone for him. There were some other players I thought that had some potential building block kind of games. Rashawn Gary was one. Had a really good rep pass rushing wise against Morgan Moses. You can see a few glimpses of him starting to get better. The results eventually, I imagine, will come, even if that's not this year. And I know that a lot of people are going to be frustrated in that regard that that's the case, but that just is what it is. So on the defensive side of the ball, I think there were some definite encouraging things, but like I said, not a whole lot to be learned. The offense, outside of Aaron Jones, I mean, what is there to say? They allowed Washington to get pressure with 4. They were able to cover with 7 players, and they just were out of sync really after a 14-0 head start that they got, which, okay, I mean, yeah, it was enough to win the game, and they found a way after that to essentially bleed the clock out, but there's a lot that goes into that. So, Jason, yesterday, there's kind of 2 schools of thought, and I believe that the answer, as it almost always is somewhere in the middle, but the schools of thought tend to be like, okay, yes, they're 10-3, but this team's no good. They can't beat San Francisco. They can't beat New Orleans. They can't beat Seattle. They're not going to win a playoff round or 2 and get to a Super Bowl and beat New England or Baltimore or whomever on that side. There's that school of thought that, okay, cool, they're winning, but, it's basically not good enough. And then there's the other school of thought that is like, this time a year ago, they were 5-8-1, 5-7, whatever the hell it was, and had just fired their head coach of 10-plus years and had basically been in shambles in terms of the locker room, which that portion, that's fixed. The culture is good here in Green Bay at this point in time. I think that is very fair to say. Even if Matt LaFleur flames out and goes one and done in the postseason, that alone, changing that culture, has been a huge net positive. And obviously the players deserve credit for that as well. But that's been a huge positive for them for this season. But that school of thought is, okay, at this time a year ago, they were horrible. What did you call it just a minute ago, Jason? Unicorns and rainbows or fairy farts?
Lollipops. Lollipops and unicorns.
Lollipops and unicorns, that's right. So you can be that where it's like, okay, yeah, all that's going wrong, and they're still 10-3. And my thought on that is, like I said, it's somewhere in the middle. Yes, they're 10-3. This is a lot more enjoyable to watch because last year I can tell you for a fact that that's a game that they lose. Or the Giants game. They lose one of those games. Well, the Giants game was on the road, so they probably lose that game because it was on the road. But they don't play well, and they lose. Or they barely, they play well against a good team, and then they barely lose. Like we talked about, the Rams game, the Vikings, so many close losses last year. This year they're winning those games. There's positives to that. However, I think at the same time, it's fair to point out that this team does have some flaws, and there are some questions that go into play. Now, I'm not saying that this is a team that, I don't want to go too far in the end of, they should be 5-8, like the Chargers, for example. That's ridiculous. I think that there are numbers. I think there are metrics. I think those things are helpful. They don't tell the whole story, and that's the problem that I have often had with, I don't want to call it the analytics crowd because that makes me sound really, really old school, and that's not the case. But the group that wants to point to just one number and say, this proves my point. And that's not fair because the NFL is a situational league. And you have to make plays in big situations. Something this Packers team is good at, whether you want to call it random, that's fine, but they're good at being opportunistic. They scored when they needed to. They get turnovers. They get sacks. They make big plays, whatever it is. They don't turn the ball over. They take the ball away. And they're, for the most part, I think they got the ball back yesterday with 7 minutes left in the game and bled the clock down to about a minute and a half. I mean, that's pretty good before getting a field goal there at the very end. So, essentially, I say all that to say my answer is somewhere in the middle. Yes, they're 10-3. Yes, I'm enjoying that. Yes, I understand that the playoffs and the Super Bowl are not tomorrow. There's 3 games left to play. The Packers can build on that and find something from there. But I also am not ridiculous enough to think that everything is lollipops and unicorns, as my esteemed co-host would say. So, Jason, you had some pretty strong opinions on this as we talked early, so kind of just let me know, where are you at and what do you think of, I'm going to call this your John Rahor opinion, your don't tell me how to be a fan opinion. So please go ahead.
Well, that's just it. So I understand the reality and the I didn't think that the Packers were going to be able to have this much control over their own destiny at all, let alone this early. I didn't realize that a win over Washington, which a lot of us assumed, I did, was going to happen, followed by a Rams victory over Seattle, now was going to put Green Bay into the 2 seed alone. I also recognize that obviously the Rams losing would have greatly benefited the Packers, because then they would have been closer to, or may have even clinched a playoff spot at that point. Now, but in my mind, I actually was hoping Seattle lost that game, because I don't have any doubt in my mind that the Packers are going to the playoffs. And now I, as a fan, want that 2 seed. And so Seattle losing games and New Orleans losing a game on the same day is obviously very helpful. So the fact that they both lost, Green Bay now sits in control of their own destiny. If they win out, which is a very tall task, they will remain at very least the 2 seed, and they will have a bye in the playoffs, and they will only have to travel to play whoever ends up being the 1 seed if they don't end up in that 1 seed spot, which currently right now is San Francisco. So I'm not unaware of what the situation is right now. I appreciate it very much. I have long been a very critical fan in terms of how the team plays, how they perform, what the optics are, how Aaron Rodgers plays, if they're doing all the fundamentals and they're not shooting themselves in the foot with penalties and just playing dumb games. Yesterday was a completely dumb game. You could tell I was frustrated. If you read Game Balls and Lame Calls at Cheesehead TV, it went up this morning on Monday. Go check it out. You can tell by reading that column I did not love this game. And so I handed out game balls, and I still was complimentary of the players that played well, but I was, the overall tone of the article was not very positive. So, yeah, I mean, when we're fans, that's, Jake, you've said it a bunch of times. The term fan is short for fanatic. And when you're fanatic about something in life, you do have a little bit of that lose your mind mentality. And so it's hard to keep in check all of the things that go into what makes us passionate about following the Packers. I've been following Green Bay for almost 40 years. So I've got a lot of different things that go into my fandom over the years, and that becomes part of your brain, and it just gets burned into your brain after a while. It's part of your brand. It's who you are as a fan. So there's going to be that faction of fans out there who want the beautiful, pretty bow on top masterpiece, like you said, put together the best offensive and best defensive performances. And until that happens, the team sucks. And those who say, not that I want to be quoting the Raiders, because the Raiders have not historically had a ton of success, but Al Davis, just win, baby. Mm-hmm. And the reality is it's results that matter, because results are what get you to the pinnacle, which I would assume most of us want, which is our team to win a championship and our team to win another trophy. I understand the fans who want more, and they are frustrated that this team is not more ready for the playoffs, and they're not willing to just be content to say, hey, we're better than last year. I think we got a sense early this season that this team was going to be better than last year's. So all of the appreciation and like, hey, this is a lot better than it was 12 months ago, that kind of went out the window, and we kind of reverted back. I'm saying we in a very broad general sense, and it obviously does not include everybody, but reverted back to 3 years ago when the Packers were automatic entries in the playoffs every season, and just said, hey, all right, we got a chance to do this. Like, Aaron Rodgers turns 36 this year. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers later. He may not be what he was before when he was making a ton of magic happen. He still has a little bit of magic in there. He made a couple of really good throws yesterday. I'm specifically looking at that huge play down the sideline to Aaron Jones, which was a beautiful throw and a nice catch as well. He still do stuff like that, but we're running out of time, and so that turns me into window guy, and we don't have to get into that whole conversation because that's a whole other topic. But when we come out and we start criticizing, I just saw there's so much divisiveness on Twitter and social media. Fans saying, if you can't appreciate this victory after everything we went through last year, then you turn in your fan card and go find a new hobby. Okay, that's ridiculous. Yep. Shut up. That's not cool. Telling people how to appreciate something, it's not the way. Me sitting here and telling Jake, you and I have had many conversations. Me sitting here and telling you, like, hey, you got to get more fired up here. You should be more pissed off. It's not going to make you more pissed off. You are not having the drama.
Not at that.
That's not. Least. No, and that's not who you are, and that's not who a lot of people are. The other side telling me, hey, tone it down. There's bigger things in life. Do you not have a life outside of football? Doesn't matter, because my mindset when it comes to the Packers is related to football, and it's, maybe it's compartmentalized, but there is no right or wrong way to be,
Nope.
Because it means different things to different people. When the season is over, for example, I think you are more appreciative of what's happening right now compared to last year because you hated last year a lot, and so did I, but you hated it we hate it in different ways because we're different people. So you're appreciating more the right now and the improvement over last year. I'll get there, but it'll probably take the Packers losing before they reach the Super Bowl and me to be upset and irritated and pissed off at why they lost and how they lost. And then a week after that, I'll look back and say, you know what? This was a hell of a ride. It was a much better situation. And I'll hope that they can find that same kind of success next year. There is a billion different ways to slice this thing up, but I'm just asking everybody to just listen, do what you dig. I borrowed a line from Aaron Nagler there. I think his thing is wear what you dig, because there was a debate about whether or not grown men should wear jerseys at games, which the answer is obviously yes. But where you do what you dig, if you're unless you're being completely negative just for the sake of starting arguments and riling people up, those people can go away and get blocked, blocked and reported for spam. Outside of that, we can all enjoy this in our own way. We are enjoying this in our own way. And part of that might be the tough love. Some of us are just built that way to give the tough love and say, hey, I love this team, but come on, I need more from you. And you know what? Frankly, some of the players and coaches after the game said the same thing. Hey, this is great, but we know we need to be better if we want to play meaningful football. And these are guys like Brian Bulaga. I think Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur supposedly went upstairs and started watching film right after the game. Wasn't very celebratory. These guys have been there before. They've all been to Super Bowls before. They know what it takes to get there. So they know that we're not quite there. We're not done yet. So for those of us that have higher hopes, and for me, I'm sorry if it's crazy, but if my team's going to go 12-4 or 13-3, you're damn right I expect them to compete for a Super Bowl championship, and I want them to have every opportunity to do so, and that's where that comes from.
Yeah, something that was interesting that we discussed yesterday was, did the expectation levels – I think expectations have changed twofold this year. I think coming into the year, a lot of your optimistic types of the world, the Maggie Loneys, hell, I consider myself a pretty optimistic Packers fan. People like that, I had the Packers going 9-7 and missing the playoffs. They are 10-3 right now. Like, they've already surpassed what my expectations were, but at the same time, when you start the year 7-1, 8-2, 10-3, I think the expectation levels changed again. Like you were talking about going back to, it's Super Bowl or bust. This is Title Town USA. It's not 10 wins and be happy. And I had somebody say that to me yesterday, and my response was like, man, spare me the macho crap. Yes, it's Title Town USA. I understand that. I understand that Vince Lombardi has his name on the trophy. I understand there's a big-ass statue right outside of the stadium of him pointing at Curly Lamb, or Curly Lamb was pointing at him. I understand that this team has won 13 world championships, which is the most in NFL history. Sorry, 49ers, Cowboys, Patriots fans that think half the league doesn't exist. Sorry, but it's true. I understand that. At the same time, I don't think you could have talked to one fan. Well, maybe not Corey Mankey, but Corey's special.
Packers roll 50-0 every week.
He truly believes Green Bay is going to win every game, and I give him credit from that standpoint because it's not a bit. Having talked to him, met him, everything, he truly believes that shit.
Yep.
All the time, 100%. I might have just ended up on Packer transplants. So before I guess I get into that, but at any rate, I don't think you could have talked to anybody else and gotten the impression from them that, yep, my expectation is that this year's Packers team, new head coach, new offense, old quarterback trying to learn new tricks, a ton of new pieces on defense. I really don't think anybody would have said, yep, Super Bowl. They can contend for a Super Bowl. Now, at the same time, I don't want to say, once they make the playoffs, I'm good with that. Well, no, obviously I'm not going to be good with that. If they lose to New Orleans or San Francisco or whoever, it doesn't really matter who it is. No, I'm not going to be happy that they didn't win the Super Bowl. I want them to win every game they play. That's why I'm a Packers fan. But I think those expectations where, again, at the beginning of the year, Jason, if they had kind of stumbled out of the gate as some of us kind of expected, but they started 3-0, 3 huge wins. Little slip up in Philly, but then they blew Dallas off the field for 3.5 quarters. I mean, I think the expectations were at a level bar, and then they got unrealistic again after this team started as well as they did. Or maybe unrealistic is not the right word, but they got raised after that. And I don't know if they were fairly raised, because I do think that there are some things that you could see even as Green Bay was winning, that there's some potential here for a hiccup or some issues that could become a quote-unquote fatal flaw.
Well, the other thing, too, I think is, for me, the Kansas City win, even though it was Matt Moore, was big because you stole one.
And it was on the road in a hostile environment. Those are games they did not win last season.
They
haven't won those games in like 4 years.
Well, they didn't, and reminder that same Chiefs team turned around and beat a very good Minnesota Vikings team the following week. And even though it was Matt Moore, the Chiefs defense is not trash anymore. So that was, and it took a vintage Aaron Rodgers throw, which was not meant to be a touchdown throw, to help win that game. So you've got, the Packers winning games that they haven't for a couple of years. And I'm going to continue to knock on wood here. You hear me doing it just so all the superstitious people out there know that I'm trying to keep it as good as possible. But this team is bionic this season. We are not used to seeing the availability of all the stars and all the players that we have. And I think all these things embolden us to think, hey, we can do it. We are starved for another 2010. Do you want to know how I know this? At a minimum, on a daily basis, I see 2010 on my timeline at least 5 times, maybe more. The comparisons are flowing like wine. It's out of control. We get it. We're starved for a title. So any sign that this team is going to be in good shape, we grab onto, and it only emboldens and furthers that whole narrative. Now you've got the health thing is good right now. I know it can change. The health thing is good right now. We're in December, and this team is it's gotten to the point where Zadarius Smith went down yesterday, and it did, I'm always fooled for a second into thinking, and then I'm like, he's going to come back into this game. The guy does not leave games. He just does not leave games. And all of that stuff, it all emboldens the entire mentality of what fuels us thinking that this team's going to, and then you start getting the help that we haven't gotten in the past couple seasons. The Saints lose a game at home that they could have won, and they were a big roadblock and don't want to go to New Orleans. I don't want the Packers to have to go to New Orleans. And so they dropped in the standings. And then Seattle loses a game to a Rams team that they probably could have beaten. They just didn't on that particular day. Like, the stuff is falling into place right now. And I think that's where some of that fuel is coming from that you're talking about.
Yeah, that very well could be as well. And you were talking about some of the health. I think, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think the only starters to Lane Taylor, but I mean, he kind of got benched before he got injured. Mm-hmm. But other than Devontae Adams, obviously missed a month with a foot injury, and Kevin King missed a game on Sunday with a shoulder injury, and Darnell Savage missed some time with an ankle injury. Other than that, thinking off the top of my head, I don't think any starters have missed any time.
And none of those losses have really been impactful either.
Not really.
Negatively.
I mean, it took some time for Darnell Savage to get back. He really looks like he's finding that gear he was in early in the season after kind of finding his way back after he was injured. But yeah, there's a lot there, and I think that the injury situation that's a good thing to look at too, because there's been so many times where 2010 is an anomaly, but other years there's plenty of years where. Even 2011, the Packers went 15-1. They were relatively healthy, but the game that, the playoff game that they ended up going home in, Greg Jennings, it was his first game back after a knee injury that knocked him out for the rest of the regular season. So that's something that it's exciting that the Packers are healthy, relatively, knock on wood, but it's also something that, like you said, some things are turning up green and gold a little bit. I think that probably contributes to some of the stuff that we've been talking about in terms of getting to a Super Bowl. And speaking of getting to a Super Bowl, The only way, or not the only way, I shouldn't say it that way, but if Green Bay gets where they want to go, which I assume is Super Bowl Sunday in Miami, they need Aaron Rodgers to be Aaron Rodgers. And yesterday was bad. There's no bones about it. The stat line, not awful. If you look at it at first glance, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, little over 200 yards passing. Made a couple nice plays, but he left a lot out there. And I've watched, I always say that I'm not going to make judgments on the TV copy because I think that there's again, those two schools of thought again. The people who say Green Bay needs a wide receiver will say nobody's open. People say Green Bay doesn't need a wide receiver says, well, Rodgers has people open. He's just passing them up. Again, the answer is both of those things. Rodgers doesn't need to pass up the stuff they have, but yes, they do need more playmakers at the same time. That being said, I really struggle on people that say, oh, nobody's open by just watching the TV copy. Because I know looking at the broadcast, the only things I can really see are the check down and if they run, a basic slant or something like that. But it's not like I'm looking at the TV screen and going, oh, man, he's, wide the hell open down the field. I can totally see that. You can't. You can't. And Ben Fennell, Packers fans, we're very blessed. And if you don't, I don't work for The Athletic, but if you don't subscribe to The Athletic, you should solely for that film count. And I will give Ben Fennell credit from the standpoint of people accuse him of being an Aaron Rodgers quote-unquote hater. I hate that word, but I don't know what other word to use. People accuse him of that. And I think he's very objective. I think that there are times when he gives him credit for doing the things he's supposed to do. And when he plays like he did yesterday, there are things he calls him out for. And there were plenty of things yesterday to call him out for. And he's really good at telling you process over results. So his basic, and Ben, I don't mean to steal your thunder here, but his basic principle is okay, what is the design of the play? What is the play supposed to do? And the quarterback's job on that play is to make that play work or find an answer for the defense. If there is an answer for the defense, make that answer happen. And there are too many times where, and I don't think, and we'll get more into this, but I don't think it's Rodgers refusing to play within structure. I don't believe that. And I'll get more into that here in a little bit. But I truly do think that he's struggling with some stuff and he's breaking some habits or has to have some habits broken. Because then, what happens is we start these talking points and people go back into the same narratives. And the narratives are always the same ones. Rodgers doesn't want to be coached. Rodgers tries to scramble too much. Rodgers doesn't play within structure of the offense. Rodgers doesn't do this, that, whatever. And I don't think those things are fair. I think that playing quarterback in the NFL is very hard, and I think there are players that do certain things and become accustomed to certain things. And one of the biggest things that you're going to need as a quarterback is comfort. And we'll get more into that here in a little bit. So the first question, and the first thing that usually comes up is, well, Rodgers' stat line isn't what it used to be. He's declining. He's not as good as he used to be. Jason, do you think, and we'll go a shortest discussion on this, but do you think that Aaron Rodgers is declining from a physical standpoint?
Yes, but it's not new. It's not new this year. He's just not what he was when he was in his peak form. So that's why I say yes. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers can't be good and he can't turn back into something great. I was trying to look for Ben's tweet today that he had just finished up film review, and he said it was one of the worst performances that he's seen from Rodgers in a long time. And he also reminded us that after the Lions game, he gave very high praise to Aaron Rodgers the following day. So yeah, Ben Fennell is he does a good job. I know that not everybody agrees with everything that he puts together. Grades are subjective, obviously, because you've got somebody making a determination as to whether or not something was good. I know Andy Herman, the Pack a Day founder, and your colleague over at Packer Report, does some good work there. He does his own grades and stuff like that. Aaron Rodgers is got limitations. He's 36 years old. He doesn't run like he used to, although he can still make plays with his feet, but he doesn't have that same ability and he's improvising still. It's some of the issues that happened last year are holding over to this year, and they're squarely because Aaron Rodgers plays the way he does. We have to take the good with the bad. It's kind of like the conversation we had earlier about fandom and looking at it one way or the other. You're going to get some phenomenal things from Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers' best chance to win a Super Bowl is absolutely with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, 100%. So let me be very clear about that. He's the man. He's the guy, no question about it. He's not the same guy that he was 10 years ago, and none of us are the same person that we were 10 years ago. We're all 10 years different. Right. In some cases it's different, but that's just life. It's just life. And I think some of us clung to him saying a few years ago that he wanted to play into his 40s and he was taking care of his body and he wanted to be like Tom Brady and play a long time. And of course, all of us ate that up because we're thinking he's going to take care of himself and he's going to be the exception and he's going to be able to play at this level and he's still going to be running for the hundreds of yards a season that he does and making plays with his feet and all that kind of stuff. Well, all that stuff, first of all, the league catches up with it. Defenses change and the division finally gets tired of getting sliced the hell up by Aaron Rodgers. So they draft a bunch of speedy defensive backs. And now all of a sudden it's a different story. Now they have guys that can keep up with our receivers. Oh, by the way, we ignored the receiver position this year. So that's easy to do. So, I mean, it's all these things happen. There's so many different things that go into it. But, Ross Uglum made a good point that said, I'd like to see what Aaron Rodgers' quarterback rating is when he doesn't pat the ball at the top of his drop, which means when he throws it in rhythm. Because yesterday, if you look at the offense, the first two drives, and what do we know about the first two drives, Jake? What perfectly syncs up? It's the script. Exactly. It's scripted. So, of course, there's a rhythm, and Aaron Rodgers is getting the ball out, and everything is great. As soon as that goes away, listen, if they're going to play like that, Matt LaFleur, if you want an easy answer, just script the whole damn game. Just script the whole damn game then, because you clearly can't lose that. You can't afford to lose that momentum, or, I know you hate that word, that continuity or that efficiency. So script the whole damn game, I guess. I guess, and just hope that the defense can't keep up with it or their adjustments, that you can still beat their adjustments. I don't know what else to say, but it's, there's just little things that happen. Like I find myself now, as I'm in my early 40s here, when I'm driving, I don't take the same turns that I used to. Like a turn that I used to take when in front of a car that was coming, now I'll wait. Because there was the quarter of a second that I thought about it longer than I used to. And now I'm waiting to make that turn. That's one example that I can use. And Aaron Rodgers, the game of football still comes as fast as it has over the years. That doesn't change, but his ability to process it and react to it does. And those things matter. Those quarter of a second, half a second mean everything when you look at how fast these guys are running and how fast they're playing. So, yes, Aaron Rodgers is declining. I'm not sounding any kind of an alarm or any kind of a bell here. The Packers still have a phenomenal chance to do something special this season and win a championship. And you know what? If they don't do it this season, they still have a phenomenal chance to do something special and win another one next season, because we don't know what the offseason is going to look like. We don't know what pieces the Packers are going to add. And maybe a full offseason of knowing that Matt LaFleur is the head coach, knowing what the offense is, and knowing everything else will help a little bit. Aaron Rodgers is still going to be Aaron Rodgers. C.D. Angeli made a post today on Twitter and said, listen, when Favre turned 36, which incidentally was the 2005 season, he was not listening to Mike Sherman. He threw 29 interceptions that year. The Packers won 4 games, one of which was in the last game of the season, and they were complete garbage. And there was a lot of people that thought that Favre was going to hang it up and quit playing. So this is part of the deal. When guys get older, things change. All of his buddies are gone. Jordy's gone. All those players that he was highly successful with were gone. Now he looks around the locker room and he's having to take to and form new relationships with guys like Z, Preston Smith. You got Bakhtiari and Bulaga. Those are his dudes. Devontae Adams has become his guy now that Jordy's gone. He loves Jimmy Graham. He brought Jimmy Graham in. That's a veteran that he's wants to help win a championship. All of those things all play a role. and it's never gonna go away. There's never gonna be the bashing of Rodgers and comparing him to, insert quarterback who, declined at the end of their career. It's just a fact. It's going to come down to how much Aaron Rodgers wants to buy in and really make some changes. I'll end with this because this has gone on a long time. I've rambled on for a long time. Jay, it's a different situation, Jake, but I know you remember this too. Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos offense in 2015 was not good.
Nope.
Their defense carried their asses all the way to the Super Bowl and beyond and won them a championship. They also were fortunate to be playing against Cam Newton and the Panthers, but that's my stupid joke. Peyton Manning actually put a lot of work into just being able to play that season. He actually changed his entire throwing motion, the mechanics of his throw, and worked with a coach that helped him get a little bit more torque on his throws so he could make 75% of the throws that he used to make, just so he could be effective enough to not suck. Is Aaron Rodgers going to do some of those things? Does he need to do some of those things? Only he knows, only the coaching staff knows, but I think it's pretty obvious. We're still lucky to have him, but if you want to see vintage Aaron Rodgers, you might want to pull out some tapes from, I'd say, 2009 through 2012 and watch those over and over again, because it's just not going to be the same moving forward.
See, I don't entirely agree. I think that now when I mentioned that, like I've mentioned it before, that I think MVP Rodgers is gone. And there's a lot of things that go into being MVP Rodgers. So it's going to sound, I guess, kind of hypocritical or contradictory, but I don't think MVP Rodgers is something that is a thing anymore, and I do think the Packers should plan accordingly, but there's a lot of things that go into that. The best Aaron Rodgers that we've ever seen was decisive, saw the plays, and let the ball rip. And something as simple as yesterday, for example, the touchdown pass to Robert Tonyan. There's nobody near him, but Rodgers still double clutched and hesitates before throwing the ball. Now, it worked out because he threw a touchdown pass. But there are other times where that doesn't happen. And I also believe that, 3 years ago, maybe even less than that, the list of quarterbacks that I would rather have than Aaron Rodgers was 0. None. Not one. Now, coming into this year, that list was 1, Patrick Mahomes. That list is getting longer. But not 15, 16 deep. That's what some people would lead you to believe that is that number. But there are some things that I think that need to be broken, and I don't know that you can do that in 1 year's time. And I mean Aaron Rodgers' mechanics, Aaron Rodgers' propensity to throw off of his back foot. Something as simple yesterday as there's a stick route that Devontae Adams runs on the left sideline. Rodgers throws it off his back foot, and he's fading away as he throws the ball, and the ball skips, and Adams doesn't catch it. Should have been an easy play. That's an easy throw. And there's a lot of plays that Rodgers makes like that look pretty good. The Geronimo Allison play against the Giants is a perfect example. But I do believe that from a physical standpoint, you've seen there are things that he still does at the highest level. Arm strength is still there. Accuracy is still there when he's mechanically sound. Now, he can still do things that are not mechanically sound to make plays because he's an ultra-talented professional athlete. But he does need to pay a little bit more attention to some of those details and be more mechanically sound and trust what he's seeing and let the ball rip. I think that's the biggest problem, is that I said it after last year. I didn't think Rodgers trusted the offense. He didn't trust what he was seeing or didn't trust the guys that were out there, whatever the answer is. But trust is important. I know that's an icky buzzword that has happened in Green Bay because of Jeff Janis, essentially. But it's a real thing. You mean to tell me that Tom Brady in New England doesn't trust Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski to be in the right spots or to make the plays that he gives them? Rodgers trusted Jordy to make those plays. He trusted Devontae Adams to make those plays. For reasons maybe we're not altogether sure of, he trusts Jimmy Graham to make those plays too. He's thrown some balls into tight coverage to Jimmy Graham too. Rodgers still has the ability to physically play at the highest level. That being said, he does have some bad habits that he needs to break. And something as simple as hitting a check down and living to fight for another down. or something as simple as stepping into a throw and not rushing himself. Because, Jason, the game we were at, the Carolina game, the Packers had a chance to put that game away. And Rodgers threw 2 balls off of his back foot. They were incomplete passes, and they had to punt and eventually make a goal line stand to preserve a win there. So I don't think Rodgers is declining from a physical standpoint. I think he still moves okay. I still think, you've seen him run a little bit. I would like to see him run less because that's how these quarterbacks that age well, so to speak. People say Drew Brees is a statue in the pocket. Yeah, that's true. You know what? He beat you with his brain. Tom Brady, before he became washed up, which is, last year, but it's really carried over into this year, beat you with his brain and is able to, I see this, I have an answer for it. I beat you with my arm. I beat you with my brain and get my team into the right play. Rodgers can do that, but there are times where he looks like a rookie that is not, you kind of mentioned it, Jason, the information isn't processing fast enough of something simple. Slot corner, blitz, safety's covering that. I need to hit my hot route. That's something that I played quarterback when I was 13. Long time ago at the smallest level possible. And that's something they taught me. If you see a blitz coming, you hit your hot read. What's your hot read? Typically somebody in the middle of the field. Not always, but typically. That's something that they aren't going to do. Now, at the same time, there are some limitations in the weaponry. And I think that matters too. I think there's one big combination here. And nobody wants to talk that way. We want one hot take that says, nope. And we have this I think I was talking the other night. It was Dusty Evely and I were talking after we recorded Pack-A-Day on Saturday night. And we have this propensity of there's 2 ways of analyzing a player. He's either the GOAT or he's trash. And that doesn't apply to just Aaron Rodgers. That's Marquez Valdez-Scantling to name another player. Valdez-Scantling's either the GOAT or he's garbage and he needs to be off the team kind of thing. And that's not the case. Do the Packers have some limitations at the receiver position? Absolutely. Are there things that Rodgers passes up with this receiving unit for various reasons when they have the ability to make some plays? Yes, that's true too. But I don't think he's declining from a physical standpoint. But here's what I want to get to is here is the Packers offense last year and this year, because everybody, and I shouldn't say everybody like that, a lot of people, including the Packers, because the Packers added nothing of significance outside of Billy Turner to the offense this season. No high draft picks. Elton Jenkins, a guard. I should say to the skilled positions. Jay Sternberger, 3rd-round pick, rarely used, okay? Last year's offense averaged 23.5 points per game, 5.8 yards per play. They scored on a 38.8% clip, 7.2 yards per pass attempt, 5 yards per carry, and a 36.8 third down percentage, okay? 6.7 turnover percentage. That's big because we'll get to that here in a minute. They had a 5.8 turnover percentage. So they're turning the ball over less. That's helpful. They are scoring this year's offense, 23.8 points per game, 5.8 yards per play, scoring at a 38.1% clip, so almost a full percentage point less. They average 7.4 yards per passing attempt, 4.3 yards per rushing attempt, and they convert 35.7% of their third downs. That's kind of the same thing I've been saying even before Mike McCarthy got fired. A new coach is not just going to come in and play smoke and mirrors and turn this offense back into the 2011 Packers. What? Andy Reid's an example. This guy, granted, he's creative, offensive mind. He dials up some really good stuff. You know what else really helps? He has some really fast guys like Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman. And he has Travis Kelce playing tight end and pass-catching running backs. And, the best quarterback in the NFL. That helps him, too. Sean McVay, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks. I mean, there's some players out there. And that's, I think, the problem that we all kind of, not all of us, but a lot of us overlooked is we hoped that this brand new scheme was just going to change everything. And it never was. Now, I'm not saying that Matt LaFleur is a worse coach for this Packers team than Mike McCarthy, because he's not. They're 10-3. Last year's Packers team was 5-8. Like I said, whatever it was when McCarthy got fired. But I don't know, man. I mean, there's a lot with this offense that's going on, and I think it starts with the quarterback position. I mean, yesterday, Ben Fennell said it was in that film piece, it's the worst game he's seen Rodgers play in some time. And Pro Football Focus agreed. Ross Uglum agreed in his after the film. I mean, there's a lot of people. I'll say this. This is what I'll say before I move on. There's been a lot of excuses made as to why this Packers offense hasn't been great, save for that run-the-table run in 2016, since 2014. They got rid of the coach. They got rid of that structure. They brought in a new offense. They haven't brought in some receivers, so almost every excuse is gone. The only one who hasn't been criticized, for the most part, is the quarterback. And at some point, that's going to start because we're running out of reasons. We're running out of excuses for why the quarterback isn't playing to his MVP level. I always thought this was going to take some time in order for that to happen. Obviously, they need to add players. Matt LaFleur needs to establish himself with Aaron Rodgers, and I think there's some things that maybe they're not quite getting to because they're not fully comfortable. So some of the stuff offensively is because it keeps the quarterback comfortable. Obviously, you want that. I talked about that earlier. That's why you're seeing a lot of stuff when people are saying, well, it looks a lot like Mike McCarthy's offense. Well, there's a really big holdover from that Mike McCarthy offense, and it's under center. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm not saying that the Packers need to start looking to replace Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback. I'm saying that at worst, if I said, okay, this is worst case scenario, how many quarterbacks am I taking over Aaron Rodgers? Without going all the way through, I'm going to guess that answer is around like 7 or 8 guys, tops. And that means that he's still a very good starting quarterback in the National Football League, and you can win with that kind of quarterback, but I think the Packers need to look at that accordingly. Jason, is there anything to add to why the offense maybe looks similar from this year to last year? Is it time to start criticizing the quarterback maybe a little bit more fiercely? I mean, what are we looking at here?
I think just be fair and just, be open to it. Just because of what he's accomplished doesn't mean that he can't be criticized or, held to task. So, that part of it, and then just realizing again, it's not going. It's only going one direction. It's not going the backwards. I mean, for me to hear you say that there could potentially even be as many as 5 other quarterbacks that you might take over Aaron Rodgers, or if you're starting a franchise, you pick those guys. This is just a different time that we enjoyed a long run of Aaron Rodgers being that dude. And he still is in some ways. The NFL is a lot of copycat anyway. So if you look at a lot of offenses, they're probably going to look similar to Mike McCarthy's. And like you said, the personnel matters as well. You've got to play within what you have. And a lot of the guys that are running the routes and catching the balls that quarterback under center that you mentioned is throwing are also holdovers from last year. So it's no wonder. So maybe if anything else, we should appreciate him, what he has done more in the fact that they are 10-3, because that's how slim the margin of victory can be in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that you just hit the head perfectly there on margins of victory being slim. There's a lot going on in Green Bay. I know, like I said, there's a lot of schools of fandom. There's the group that will never criticize Aaron Rodgers. And Jason and I kind of want to pat ourselves on the back because I remember pretty vividly last year, we discussed this after Green Bay lost in Detroit, bachelor party weekend, on how Aaron Rodgers was immune to criticism in the media. Everybody, it's kind of like what we're seeing right now happen in New England with Tom Brady. Is a lot of people are pointing out, they don't want to point out that Brady's washed, so they say he has no help. But for years, it's been talking about how Brady elevates this and Brady elevates that and blah, blah, blah. Now he has no weapons because their offense sucks. We talked about that last year. And now this year, it's picking up a little bit of steam at least, but there are 2 groups of fandom. The ones that will never criticize him, the ones who come at, I always say, I've been talking about Ben Fennell a lot, but I just saw a tweet that came through was talking about how, Rodgers is a legend and let's see you go out there and do that. Well, duh, I'm not a professional athlete. I don't play quarterback. Of course I can't do that. But there are peers that can, and that's kind of what we're comparing him to when we talk about these things. Rodgers will be immune to criticism from those people forever and ever. There's the other side of things, the Favre people, that have never let go of the fact that the Packers chose to start Aaron Rodgers and jettisoned Brett Favre, that want to replace him as soon as he farts and it smells bad. I mean, that's essentially how it's going to be with that group of people as well. And I understand that, and that's whatever. Those people are always going to be overly critical. As always, and I've said this about a million times, the answer is somewhere in the middle. Does Aaron Rodgers suck? No. Is he done? No. Is he immune to criticism, and does he need to change things? Yeah. Packers offense has been bad for going on 3 years now. Yeah, they need to change a few things with him. We'll see if they do. Unfortunately, that's a question that cannot be answered until 2020. Maybe they can find some consistency here in the last 3 weeks of the season, which will start on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, and we will have another show for that. But we have gone way the hell over what we're supposed to, so this is going to take a long time to upload, so I apologize for that. Ahead of time, honey, you're upstairs, and I can hear the baby crying a little bit, so she's probably going to be pissed at me. So, rough night in my house. She just went back to work today, too, so pray for me, everybody, if you're the praying type. But that's going to do it for this edition. To say all that, be sure to check out our Twitter handle. It's @PackerPulse. You can follow Jason on Twitter. He's @Jason Perone. And you can follow me. I am @Jacob Westendorf. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, like it, leave comments. I've been trying to kind of interact with you guys a little bit more on the videos and stuff like that, so I appreciate you coming through and watching and everything of that sort. Packers win 20-15 over the Washington Redskins. They'll play the Chicago Bears Sunday at noon. A win, they're probably going to make the playoffs anyways, but a win really goes a long way to finally sealing up that playoff berth. A win coupled with a Rams loss gives the Packers a playoff berth. I'll have to check some clinching scenarios for the North. I don't believe they can clinch the North next week.
Well, I'll gladly take care of that with my...
Jason's got his little playoff machine that he'll take care of for you guys. So we'll have that for you later this week on the Bears game. But Packers win. They're 10-3. They're first place in the NFC North with 3 games to play. The division gauntlet that we talked about all offseason, all schedule analysis. Here it is. It's go time. It's ready to go. All gas, no break. Green Bay has a chance to clinch the division, and if they win out, they control their own destiny for the number 2 seed in the NFC as well, so that's important also. Thank you guys for listening, and of course, as always, go Pack Go!